good evening. Nearly just knocked the phone off as I went live. Welcome to Parenting Children with Speech and Language and Communication Difficulties Tuesday night live. Now I did this live last week, but it was a bit of a disaster. For some reason my Wi-Fi wasn't really working, and lots of people were saying that they couldn't hear me, they couldn't see me, it was really glitching. And so I thought I would just pop on and come and do that live again for you. Now I can't find my notes for it, so it might be ever so slightly different, but the content will be the same. What I'm talking about will be the same. So if you're coming on, give me a hashtag live. I'd love to know who's watching me. And if you're watching subsequently, give me a hashtag replay and let me know where you're watching from. It just really helps me to know who's watching the lives and whether anyone's watching them, and whether it's something that's worth doing. So I'd really enjoy it if you could do that for me. Now I have got my computer up because I'm trying to see if any comments happen whilst I am live, but I do find it a bit distracting, so I might switch it off. But if you see my eyes darting around, that's why. It's because I'm watching my laptop in hope of being able to see if anyone's watching and who's watching, so that I can say hello to you. So today is about symbols, and I am sure that many, if not all of you, have heard about using symbols to support communication. And the reason for that is that we know that language happens in the brain by the connection of neurons. And if you use just an auditory channel to make those connections, that's one thing. But if you add visual and auditory together, it's like a double hit. So you're going to get a stronger connections, and maybe the connections made quicker for some children. So anything visual that you can do, we often talk about facial expression, we talk about gesture, we talk about signing, and we talk about symbols. And so symbols is just one of the things that you can do to visually support your child. But unless you're testing your child to see how much they can understand, children with speech and language difficulties need that extra help to make those connections, but also it just creates more success, and success is really is really important, because that feeds into self-esteem and your child seeing themselves as someone who is able to communicate successfully. So we'll crack on and we'll talk about symbols, and what I wanted to talk to you about is the different ways we can use symbols, because I want to talk about PECS, which is Picture Exchange Communication System, but people often use the word PECS as a synonym for using symbols, and it often causes confusion. And so what I wanted to do was talk to you about the different ways you can use symbols, what they can be used for, and what they're doing and how they're supporting children. So the first thing to say is that a symbol is a picture. It could be a photograph, it could be a drawing, it could be a computer generated icon, it could be in black and white, it could be a real life object like a crisp packet that's been laminated. So all of these things can be used as a symbol for children. Now it depends on your child's level of symbolic understanding, and I mean that's a whole other training, but it's dependent on your child's level of symbolic understanding will depend on what's the right symbol for your child. But if in doubt, start with photographs, because they're going to be the best way. For some children it has to be objects, but we're going to assume that your child's at a level where photographs are okay. So when I'm talking about symbols, just kind of think about little pictures, little photographs that you can laminate and cut up. And so we can use them to support our children's understanding. We can use them to support their expression, their expressive language, and we can also use them to support interaction. And those three things and those three ways of using symbols are really different, and that's where the confusion lies. So if you're wanting to help your child's understanding, you're looking at ways of putting symbols in the environment in order for it to support the child to understand what's being said. So it might be a visual timetable, it might be symbols around the house on different items like the door or the cooker or the toy box or baskets with different toys in. Nurseries often will do that so children know where to kind of locate things. It might be a now and next board, so now we're doing this and after this next will be. So now we're help children understand what's being said to them. Or the other thing that sometimes we use is traffic lights or a stop symbol, or we might use, sometimes you'll see people with them around their neck and they might have emotion cards to help children understand that they're getting angry or sad and that they maybe need to help to manage those emotions. So those are all about understanding. Now separate to that is symbols to help children to themselves. So the thing that the child might need to express themselves is vocabulary that is relevant to them. It's things that they want, that they need. It might be about emotions, it might be about toys, it might be about food, it might be about people, it might be about places. But it's got to be things that the child would want to communicate with you, and it's got to be at the right level. So there's lots and lots of ways that we can do this. So it might be that you have individual symbols that the child can point to. It might be that you have a symbol board with lots of symbols, so it could be a mealtime board, and on there are all the different things that the child might want to ask for. And what you wouldn't put on there is the things that you want the child to understand. So you wouldn't have rules about mealtime on there, because that's about comprehension. You would have, if you wanted it to be about the child's expression, it would be things that they could ask for. What opportunities for choosing or for asking for things are there during this time? It might be a symbol book that you could have in the corner of the room, or in a classroom on the side, and the child can go to the symbol book. Often they have Velcro on them, they can take them off and come and ask you for something. And again, it's those words that you know in your child's head that they want to get out, and that can be tricky, particularly for children whose expressive language is going really well and their comprehension is going really well and their expressive language is lagging behind, because it's hard to know how much is in there. And I think one of the biggest downfalls of symbols for communicating or signing is that we just don't get to the level the child needs it to be at. And POD is one thing that has been created by speech language therapists that's designed to fill that gap, because it provides a really big chunky book full of lots and lots of vocabulary and lots of ways of saying things and asking for things. And the child has all of that, and at first you're like, wow, my 2-year-old can't use this whole massive book. But actually what it does is it gives them the opportunity to, within that book, find the words that are relevant for them. So it's never not enough. It starts off feeling too much, but it's never not enough. which is one of the downfalls of having symbols. And the other thing is AAC, so for example, a computer program or on the iPad, so something electronic would be high-tech AAC, so that the children can point to the symbol, it's already in there. Anna is asking where she can get a now and then board from. I reckon that I will be able to find you a link and I'll post it below after this live, because people do some, but you could make one. But if I find you one, then you'll know what it is and how to make one. And so electronic devices allow the child to have much more scope, much more vocabulary, in order for them to select the words and put sentences together that they want. So that's really useful for lots of children who are really hampered at expressing themselves, but the comprehension is soaring ahead. So you can see how symbols can be used for comprehension and used for expression, but very differently. And it's important that you put both of those in place if you've got a child with expressive language difficulties or general language difficulties. And the third is interaction, and that's where PECS comes in. And PECS is Picture Exchange Communication System, and it is devised to be almost a step before that I've been talking about with using symbols for expression. So it's for children who are in their own world. These children that we've talked about a few times, they've got their own agenda, they don't seem to notice that you're there, they're not particularly interested in playing, very happy in their own world. They might ask for something, but the way they ask is to grab your hand and put it in the place where they know the item is, or they'll stand by the fridge door and just look at the door, and you interpret that as them wanting milk or juice or whatever. So they're not yet intentionally sending you a message to say, hey mum, can I have some milk please? Or even milk, and looking at you. They're just focused on the item that they want, and it doesn't involve the person who might do that. So what PECS does is it gives us a way to teach the children that there's a step in between. There's a step in between the milk being in the fridge and the milk being in the cup to drink. You need to ask somebody, you need to involve another adult, and actually, guess what, this adult's really quite helpful, and if you ask them, you're going to get a reaction, and suddenly you've got a bit of control over your world. And for these children, that's not occurred to them, or that's a really difficult barrier that they're faced with. So PECS is a very structured system, so it's broken down into phases. It's difficult at first to do at home because you need two people, and I know that some of the talk from last week, people had commented, I'm on my own, how can I do this? I've not got the means to have two people, and it is really tricky. And maybe you could bring in a sibling or a friend or a neighbour to come and help you with this. But what happens is that you have somebody who's silent and physically prompting the child. And when I say that, they're just lifting up their hands and showing the child what to do, but without speaking. And you have somebody sat opposite the child who's communicating. Now, for these children who are in their own world and are quite happy, the main thing that we need to do is find out what motivates them, because they're not innately motivated by spending time with an adult or with a parent or a sibling or whoever. That doesn't come as a natural desire. They need to learn to do that. And so you find the things that are the most motivating, and brilliant if it's food, like for some children it's Cheerios or chocolate buttons, because you get lots and lots of opportunity for repetition. But for some children it might be a specific toy, it might be tickling, it might be a certain light, anything, whatever it is. We once did it with a child just loved this red bit of plastic. It didn't really do anything. For me, I couldn't see the appeal, but for this child it was his biggest motivator, and we used that as a starting point for PECS, and we just took a photograph of said red item and we used that as the symbol. So to us, it meant nothing, but to this child it was the centre of his world, so that's what we used. And what happens is the adult sits with the toy, doesn't ask the child anything, just looks at it. Say it was Cheerios, Cheerios, so you're kind of enticing, drawing attention to it, and what the child's natural reaction will be is to reach out and grab the Cheerios. And as that action happens, so that reach happens, the silent prompter from behind, just hand over hand, pulls the child's hand down to grab the symbol, passes it to the communicator, and the communicator very quickly gives the Cheerios. So it all happens really quickly. And the child's got the Cheerio and doesn't really quite at first know what happened, because they were reaching for the Cheerio a minute ago and suddenly something happened in the middle and then they've got the Cheerio. But for loads of children, it doesn't take long for the penny to drop. But actually, the key to getting that thing they so desperately want is to pass over the symbol. And when you've done that, you've added a step, you've added communication, you've added a bit more than just grabbing and taking. You've added you as being part of that picture. And at first it doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's about the symbol, but you can build on it, and it's amazing how you see the child begin to realise that this step is so important for them to learn that communication. So you do lots of repetition at that stage until the child is really confident, and then you start to add in other steps. So for example, you want the child to be quite persistent, that if you were just ignoring them, that they would do something to kind of get your attention and get you on task. So you do a lot of deliberate kind of ignoring. You want them to be able to put distance between them having the symbol and you, so they have to come over to the other side of the room and come after you with it, or they have to go over and then they have to go over to a book and bring the symbol to you. So very gradually, tiny step by tiny step, you build up. Here's a bank of pictures, and here's me, and here's all the things you want. You've got to put that little train together and get the process through. And then you build up with other motivators, and quite often what happens is children develop more interests and develop more motivators as time goes on. Things get added in, so you've got more choices. And then you teach the child to actually look at the symbol and make a decision, because at first there's only one symbol there and it's about pick up and pass over. It could be anything. Sometimes when I've done this on initial visits, we've not had the luxury of the actual proper symbol. We've just used a blank card, because it doesn't matter at that stage. It's just the first step. But as time goes on, you want the pictures there. You want the child to be able to look and select which one they want, and there's very, very clear steps as to how to do that. And then you can move on to children making decisions, making sentences. So I want Cheerios, and then I want blue car. And then you go on to things like what they can see, or look, I see bird. And so you can begin to help the child to use the symbols to build up. And you're always speaking, you're always saying the words, you're always saying repetition, and often the child will start talking, not always, but the child will start talking along with the symbols. And so PECs can be really, really powerful for helping those children in those initial stages. For some children, once they've learned that interaction happens, it kind of opens a bit of a world for them, and that you don't need to go on to all the other phases of PECs. You just need to kind of use it in that very early stage to get them to realise that they can ask for things. So that's why PECs is about interaction. It's about that exchange. And what often happens is people say, oh, we're doing PECs, and what they really mean is we're using symbols in the environment, or we're using a symbol book, and the child doesn't need to learn to interact. That bit's already there. What the child how important it is for those connections to be made, and actually by just using visuals, you're just strengthening those neural connections. So I'll share that video below. Think about the level that your child's at in terms of how many words they want. Don't start with too little. If you use a communication board for your child, but actually you've got loads to say, it's not going to be motivating. They're not going to be interested. And remember to support comprehension as well as expression, and to really think about what it is that you're doing and what the purpose is. And PECS is brilliant for interaction, and if you think that that's something that your child would benefit from, ask your speech and language therapist. I'm more than happy for you to drop a line to me and ask me if I can help you, but if you've got a therapist on board, speak to them, ask them about it, and whether it would be the right thing for your child and how you can maybe start to introduce it. Thank you very much. Sorry it's a repetition from last week, but hopefully there's slightly less glitching. I did see the orange band across the top of my phone a few times, which I think means that I probably went off and came back, so apologies for that, but I think it should be recorded, so as you watch it back it should be okay. My website is nearly up and running, www.joannejones.co.uk. I've been working really hard on that, not totally finished, and if you see any typos, do shout, because typos are my downfall. So yeah, I've still got a bit of proofreading to do and making sure that it's all absolutely, but it's there, so I'd appreciate any feedback. And I am really